April 2nd, Caroline County Transportation Committee is now called to order. First on the agenda, we want to have everyone had a chance to look at the minutes from last month. Are there any changes, modifications? I'll entertain a motion.
Move that we approve the minutes as mailed.
Second.
Okay, we probably move and second that the minutes from last month will be approved as reported. All those in favor, please, motion by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I would abstain because I was not here.
Okay, thank you. One abstain. Okay, thank you. Ayes have it. Next, we'll move into our updates and turn it over to staff.
Do we have any updates?
Okay, thank you. Any new business, staff?
No, I think I like to reserve new business to have to deal with.
That's on the list?
Yeah, well, the SSYP is the new business.
Yeah,
Updates the SSYP.
yeah, that's what it is.
Okay.
So, last time we were here, Rick came and talked to us about the SSYP and our limited funding. And then we talked about at that meeting the possibility of shortening the turn lane on Devil's Street Jump. That project was listed on the proposed SSYP. And Rick was able, I think, to find some funding that could do that. And correct me, Rick, if I'm wrong here, but you said if that is indeed the case, this project could come off of this listing. Is that correct? Or
No.
Okay.
So what it is the project is fully funded in the secondary 6-year plans, but to do the turn lane as originally designed, the full version, 500 feet, it can't be constructed until fiscal year 2028. And I had proposed a shorter turn lane of 250 feet. And if we can do that, we can fund it. There's a little bit of money down in one of the county lots. If I can move that up to, it's like $9,892. That would be enough to be able to construct this fiscal year. So I'd be able to go out there and have it built after school's out this summer. So, and David Bill was supportive of the last time, but I don't think it went to a vote. So make sure that's what everybody wants to do. If I can get consensus on that, I can pull this out year money back down into the county line. That would be available for something else in the future. Another project.
Is this going to be a temporary fix? Will we eventually need to go back and extend the turn lane back to the second entrance?
I think this will do the job it's intended to do, but if it ever does need to be extended, we could just hook up to where we stop now and move it on further back in the future. So we just don't have the money to do it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't suggest, just wait till 2028 to do anything.
No.
We could do
Something that will help alleviate what's out there.
Okay. Safe.
sure.
Thoughts? Anybody?
Sounds good. I'll make a motion to approve the shortening of the turn lane and early construction there too.
Second.
Will we modify that to also move the funds from one pot to the other?
Yes.
Just as necessary.
Yeah.
So what pocket are we moving it?
That's what I was going to say. How
So the bottom line, I don't know if anybody has a copy, but the bottom line on that you're seeing on the screen is called a countywide services, UPC. And what a countywide is, it's pretty much a balance entry. So unallocated funds. So we would pull these funds that are in fiscal year 27 and 28 down into that bottom pot. And it would just stay there until you decide something else that we could do with it. like if it's another project, you wouldn't be able to do something probably to 27, 28 anyway with those funds because there wouldn't be enough to do much other than a little small turn lane, but they would be there for a future project. You know, like maybe a rural rustic or something like that, small one.
So we're moving the unallocated funds to Devil's Three Jump project or
No,
vice versa
From
Devil's
Devil's
Three
Creek
Jump
to
then
the county.
to the county? Okay.
And that's created by the surplus with the scope change.
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
So the money we wouldn't need to do the big turn, we can just move it down.
Be available to do some other project.
Right.
So then,
And that's what we do with, you know, like the first two projects, they're on the list. They are both complete and but we can't take it off this list until they are financially closed. And any money that needs to be transferred to or from is complete. So these two will drop off next year. So the Devil's Three Jump would be the same. It would drop off next year as well. If we get it done this summer. So next year, you would just be starting new with a new project, you know, whatever the transportation committee decides to push forward.
So thank you. Okay. You want to modify the motion?
Wait a minute, question.
Yes, sir.
So Rick, what are the exact amounts that we were talking
For 27, 28, the funds would be the 69,249 in fiscal year 2027 and 25,360 in fiscal year 28. So they would be added to the money that's down in the countywide. In the 27, it's just $9,800, and 28 is 53,000. So you could have like in fiscal year 28 somewhere around $150,000, which unfortunately doesn't do a whole lot, but for turn lanes or, you know, if you had a project where you needed to, you know, brush up crosswalks or pedestrian crossings and stuff like that, you know, we can use it for things like that as well.
And can any of that money be used for matching funds
Or like revenue sharing,
or TAP?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I know it can in revenue sharing. I'm pretty sure it doesn't in TAP because in revenue sharing, you can't use secondary funds to be the match for the state funds, which I'm fine for. So I don't think so. I can find out for sure tomorrow, but I believe that 20% match for TAP has to be for local funds. You know, to us, it's just local. If you have a developer giving you money and so we use that, that's, you know, to us, that's a local fund. As long as we're giving it to this community, nobody got it. So
I'll be happy to amend the motion to do what Rick said.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Amend the motion to do what Rick just said we needed to.
And Rick, what did you just say?
start over.
Oh, and one or two cents.
So we're taking the 500-foot turn lane and it's reducing it to 250 feet and taking the fiscal year 27 and 28 money that we no longer need for the 500-foot turn lane and putting it down on the countywide project, which is monitoring the, you know, funds for future use. We'll find out.
And so the 55,391 will do the job of the shorter turn lane.
So the 55,000 that you see on fiscal year 26, I would also move the funds that are down in the bottom, the $9,800 and $92 in the countywide fund, just to make sure there's enough.
Okay, that was the 9,000.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so here's the motion for the record. Okay. A motion to approve moving FY26 funds from countywide transportation services.
Actually, I misspoke. Those funds that are in 26 are unpaid road funds.
Okay.
And so this would be like new construction, so I can't use those, but I think I could do 55,000 anyway. That was the estimate I got from our contractor.
Okay.
And he usually comes in a little under his bid, so I think we're good either way.
Okay. So,
So we believe those 26 funds down. countywide. So
Great,
it'd be
okay,
available
that's
to
good.
future ones.
Good, so the motion is to approve the, scope change, 250-foot length for the Devil's Free Jump Road, right turn lane, and to move the FY '27 and FY '28 funds on Devil's Free Jump down to, countywide transportation services. The FY '27 amount, 69,249. FY '28 amount, 25,360.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's been motion and second. That can shorten modify the change this whole work to shorten the length of Devil's Three Jump ramp as well as move funds from the fiscal year 26, 27 down to Carolina wide, all those up to the county wide of the Carolina. 27, 28.
Yes.
27, 28. And move those funds down to. Stand up.
Aye.
Any opposed? I have it.
So, Mr. Chairman, I ask a couple questions about the document on the screen.
Yes, sir, please.
For the 6,000 that's expended in the county funds, do you know what that 6,000, 6117?
So the countywide funds, they are for the life of that project. So as long as this countywide has been there, there's been, that money has been spent. It could have been spent, 5 years ago to fix a couple stop signs in the county or something like that. That's one thing we used to use the countywides for. We don't anymore, but so much. But it used to be like a pocket we could use when we needed to do a little something like that, like a stop sign or refreshing.
Speed study.
Yeah, speed study or stuff like that.
So in our final document, then that 311 will increase by the two amounts that we moved down?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Very good. And so just for the committee's information, so we submitted to the board's agenda for Tuesday night authorization for public hearing on the 6-year plan for the May 8th board meeting. And so this will be a report, I'm sure as a part of that discussion for authorized advertising. We'll probably walk through this a little bit. And one of the things that I'm sure that they'll want to know is the committee's feeling on, just moving the money to next year, what the new balance would be at the bottom. And just to let them know that, hey, we felt like there wasn't a lot of money there this year to really do anything, and we were moving forward to add it next year. And I guess would it be safe, Rick, or is there a way for us to estimate what next year's funds might be, or is that just kind of waiting till kind of make some adjustments?
There is no way to actually guess it because it has gone down the past few years, a little bit over.
Mm-hmm.
But what you see there in the later fiscal years, the 69,249 and 29, 30, and 31, that is an estimate based on the final amount we got last year.
Okay.
So what they do is, if that was the amount last year, they project it forward and then adjust, as they get new figures in the new fiscal year, like next year, the spring, when they do this again, they'll adjust the totals. Unfortunately, it's going down past few seasons. Don't know why they were supposed to send out some sort of information trying to explain it. It's based on some formula with population and things like that. And the unpaid roads is, based on the amount of unpaid roads you have in the county. So the more you pave through the years, the less that goes down. So the telecommunications. utilities that are in our right of way, they have to pay it. Allocated out to the localities based on population. Unfortunately, with Caroline County, there's not a whole lot, it's down to like 69,000 a year, and there's not a whole lot you can do with that. So, best thing to do is save it over a couple of years, you know, if you can, and then maybe a couple of years down the road, do a little bit bigger of a project. It's basically a big bunch of turn lanes like this. Look for a bigger project. And I am working on the unpaved roads list that we had, and based on traffic numbers and things like that, there's not a whole lot of roads left in the county that are eligible. I was looking at one, and I didn't bring that list, and I can't remember what.
Alps Lane was the one that was eligible.
Which one?
Alps Lane.
Yes. Okay, I don't look at that one, but there's one lane, or there's one road in the county
Got it here.
around
It's
the
the-
creek or front.
There were two that were eligible with AADT, and we look, and it's on your list. You call State Route 618, Beverly Run Road, and the southern part of 618 goes from Lauraville Road to a dead end. Anyway, the name of that on the now is Alps Lane, and it has the 134 ADT, and the other one is Herring Creek Road, from Courtney Road to Camp Road. That's the one that only has 54 ADT, and that goes through a like farm field and like a fox dog hunt club. And I didn't think that looked like they would even want to pave that. It also has a paved. It's just another way to get to the same road. But that 618 Alps Lane, it's 1.1 mile to the dead end. That's what your sign says. That's what this says. And the last driveway is about halfway down. So I thought if you all drove that, you might have enough money to hard surface that to the last driveway. There is an active, looked like a breeding or equestrian facility on there, and a real nice place down on Beverly Run. But that looked to me like the best. Oh, and here's the question to you. Mount Gideon Road is hard surfaced. So you had it here on the unpaved list with 189 AADT, but that road, Mount Gideon Road, is hard surface now.
It is.
So, okay.
And that's one of the things I'm looking at when I'm updating the sheet, because the Beverly Run, I think it was, is showing an ADT of 54. But what it is it's paved on this side, it's paved on this side, and the piece in the middle is unpaved. But when I go look at the daily traffic on that, it's like 15 or something like that.
Right. Well,
Because people are going around it.
Right. Well, this from and to is Lauraville, just to the south dead end. There, Beverly Run Road, the one named Beverly Run, like starts at Sparta Road and it goes a pretty long way. Okay. And so you're saying there's a section in the middle that's unpaved. The one on this list is 218 from Lauraville. It's south of Sparta Road. So there's another 218 with the road Alps Lane that is on this list.
Let me work on that a little bit more.
Great.
And then I'll send it to Leo to pass out. But I'm finding a couple things on the list that I showed the first time that's just not making sense. Like there's one road that shows this or the whole road has like 50 cars a day or something like that. But the piece back here that is also unpaved that goes to it and then goes out to the state road now, which is only showing like 10. I'm like, well, how could you get to that road without coming down? So
Yeah.
I'm asking our central office for a lot of,
Good.
clarity on this, but I was thinking, I haven't looked at it in a minute, but I was thinking the only road that really kind of qualified was old CCC on the list. That was that one. But there's only enough money to do just like little pieces of it. It comes down, it's hard surface, and then it's not, it's gravel the rest of the way. So, yeah, let me finish that list up and I'll send it out to everybody. I want to review it with Kyle first. He's been out to speak.
Yeah.
So, talk to him about it. Send it to him. I just heard from, our headquarters, that's at OCC. OCCC. Pretty bad shape.
Oh, is that up near Ladysmith? There's a CCC right there.
CCC road.
Is it, is that, yes, old CC roads.
Well, there's an OCC
On
and
the
there's
church and then
OCC.
CCC road is the place.
That's the latest.
In OCC connects to Wicked Glen
I
Road.
feel like it does.
Yeah, it runs north up to Dry Bridge, I think.
Sounds right.
Okay. Thanks, Rick.
Okay. Well, I did have one item. When we're done with this item.
Let's move. Go ahead. Yeah, cool.
Oh, yes. Well, yeah, can you guys, by a motion, vote to let the money stay or recommend that the money just sit this go around and until next year's allocation comes along?
My hearing aids aren't really working very well. You need to speak up a little.
So Rick has said there's not enough money really to do anything, and it makes sense for us to leave the money in the current plan until next year's allocation. And so I just want to get consensus from the committee that that's what we want to do. And so I don't think you guys have actually, by consensus or vote said that's actually what we want to do.
Well, more specifically, I hear you say that if there's not enough money to warrant finishing a project, it just sits there, correct? Okay, well, that's logical.
Yeah, and then we get an allocation next year and then add that, and then maybe something we can do next year. But when I go to the board, I'd like to have the consensus of the committee that that's what the recommendation.
I think you have Port Roll here. Ms. Golden, where are you from?
Caroline County.
Which district? Which
I think it's Ladysmith.
Ladysmith, and you're from Reedy Church. So you don't really have much. Well, you have the best of care.
Yes.
We have three of the six.
But I guess if they don't show up, that's their fault. They have laryngitis, right? Okay. So moved.
Second.
Moved and probably second that we're keeping funds in place until next year. We have additional funds to add to it to move forward with the project. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's everything.
All right, thank you. But I did want to raise one issue with the committee to get some input from you guys. And so right now is the so right now is application season for the TAP, the Transportation Alternatives Program. And this is a slide from a presentation that the VDOT folks did a couple months, last month. And essentially it talks about what the TAP program is. And as you can see, one pedestrian and bicycle facilities and community improvements. And we had a smart scale application that was not funded this go around. And I have asked if that project could be an application for the TAP program. So the difference is that the TAP program, there's a 20% match of local funds. And so I've asked Rick as well tonight if some of the money that's here in SSYP could potentially go towards that match. And so I guess the project that didn't get funded was this project here, which is a pedestrian project. You can see it's Route 1 and 207, and the red represents pedestrian accommodations along Route 207 in Rogers Park, and then also pedestrian accommodation and turn lane striping at the intersection there. And so this was a $12 million project. So, any of that's turn lane improvements here on the right here. Now, I don't know if that would qualify as part of TAP. The right turn lane improvement there, could that be included?
No, that would not qualify.
Okay, so
Excuse me, I don't understand why you put the red, I assume that's the pedestrian access in front of vacant property, whereas over on the other side of 207, you have businesses that people might want to travel between, one to the other. Or is this set up for the possums and deer and all go on the sidewalk?
no, actually,
Flying J.
this sketch does show kind of sidewalks here.
Oh, they're existing.
Well, they're not existing, but it shows that the sidewalk would extend.
Oh, the island exists, and that would put little patches of sidewalk.
Exactly.
I think the red is because you're acquiring right of way. And what you're getting to up there at the far right with the Flying J. Is that the Flying J? Leon, take it up front. Yeah.
So, excuse me, or you say acquiring rights of way for what purpose? To expand 207 so you can put the sidewalks over on the other side? Again, it's just the idea of why you're putting sidewalks over on the vacant property.
Well, because there's no development there right now.
Pardon me?
There's no development there now. So,
Yeah, I can see that.
but I'm saying people walk it. So there are people walking across that vacant property now. And
But
so
why don't you put the sidewalks over in front of the businesses?
They are.
we would put it on.
Yeah, they
we put it on both sides. It would be on both sides.
It's just not a continuous sidewalk over there because of the entrances, but you do have the sidewalks on the other side.
See, it shows them here, but there's no right. The reason it's not red is because there's no right of way acquisition in that area. So the right of way is already available here, and over here is some right of way acquisition.
Yeah.
I think your question is justified because I don't think there are many pedestrians walking from the corner, laundromat to the Flying J. I think that whole sidewalk on that southern side would not be utilized. Now there have been pedestrian fatalities. I believe there are a lot of seasonal employees, seasonal workers that stay in the hotels.
Mm-hmm.
And then down here on the corner is is a laundromat and a Mexican restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what they're doing is, and even if you put that crossing there, I'll be honest with you, they're still going to just dart across to get the straight line. Because when we bet on this with the smart the pipeline study, it's nice to have this pedestrian control and a signal here. So there would be a pedestrian activated crosswalk. So this part of the project is probably very good as far as trying to get pedestrian control. But I'll be honest with you, if I'm staying here and I want to get my laundry done and walk, I'm just gonna walk. What they're doing is kind of walking across this median now.
Well,
So
it's just that the vacant piece at site plan approval, I imagine that Caroline County had shaped a sidewalk out of the development. Is that right, Mr.
Right.
Hughes?
No, that's exactly right. But you still show it as a part of your plan is further justification for developers to do it. But yeah, if a project happens there, and we do have a project that is proposed there, coming up fairly
But
soon.
why, let them have the joy of building.
But Alex, when this was done, we didn't know they were coming. So we didn't know there was gonna be a project there. You may have known it, but we didn't know. So that's why the project got submitted this way. So that's why the sidewalk is shown there. But Becky, I would say we do have pedestrians walking, and there's evidence of a footpath on the
Oh, okay.
southern side there. But some people are walking from the Flying J.
I can see, as Ms. Golden pointed out, the justification at that intersection and justification from, on the other side of the road, going down to the intersection. But I don't see much justification for that piece in front of Vacant Road.
I agree with you.
That's my 2 cents.
So is that based on the fact that it's just vacant, or
Yeah.
the fact that you think there may be future development?
It's vacant.
Well, but I said, we have people walking now from Flying J on the
Well,
southern
if-
side.
If this plan would be an impetus for them to build it in the site plan approval process, then sure, put it in. But if it's going to pull funds from other projects, then I don't think it's a very efficient use of resources.
My thought about this is with the new development that's going on the other side of Route 1, there's going to be a lot more heavier traffic, and we can control pedestrians from trying to come across the highway doing it time. It would be beneficial to us to do it.
That's lovely, but again, the developer should have the joy of building it.
So, but the developer doesn't have anything to do with this area. The developer is a little further up Jericho Road. That's a different developer.
Eventually,
This developer here, this person here, I don't know if that's a plan to develop, but just a little further up, Flying J, right behind Flying J, those individuals, that area is being developed. So I don't know if we can ping that developer to have anything to do with this area right here. That land has been vacant for quite some time. But we do have a lot of pedestrians that walk. I live in that area, so
Okay.
and I go to Flying J quite a bit.
Why would they walk on the vacant one when they could walk on the sidewalks across the street?
Because people, honestly, I don't know where they're coming from, but at that laundromat, and you got a Mexican restaurant, you got you got a lot of little stuff going on there. That sidewalk area, I've seen people walk constantly, and then you got a daycare center that's right there in that community also, right there in that development right down at the bottom near Route 1. But people walk with Flying J, or you're supposed to walk from Flying J. I see them. It's halfway through there now if you walk.
Maybe
Is this already plugged in for smart scale, Caroline County?
It was turned out.
This was an application. Yeah, this was one of our applications that we submitted this last round that didn't get funded.
And it was turned down?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
It may well be that the Flying J truckers are spending the night there, and they're probably then walking
It could be.
to wash their clothes, and that's probably who you see going back and forth.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
'cause
don't know the individual.
Well, I'm
I
just
see
thinking
them.
if one of the few, truck stops are very few on 95, and so yeah, once you park your vehicle there, that would be an attractive. The attractor would be down here to walk on it South Road.
Yeah. And then they may just walk down to dinner,
Mhm.
restaurant, or whatever else.
So what we have, Alex's theory of development paying their or making their contribution to the network. I agree with that, and we do have a concept for a project right here, and if that was to come to fruition, then they would indeed put the sidewalk along their frontage. I don't know if they would acquire this entire parcel, but whatever they would acquire along their frontage, and they would be responsible for that portion of, the pedestrian path. If they don't acquire the entire parcel, then that would leave a gap. And so, essentially what we would end up with is, let's say they acquired up to this, 899 point, well then from that point, west, you end up with a gap if that part, portion went in there until someone else came along to develop. And we don't know when that's going to happen. So what I was seeking guidance from you all is, do you think it's a worthy project to, submit as a TAP application, knowing that one, there's a 20% match. So the cost, it was estimated at 12 million. The turn lane portion of this project would not be included in the TAP application, so that cost is going to come down. And then if that project comes to fruition, and then you'd have that segment of a portion that would come down. So the cost would be reduced pretty significantly. So we'd have to go through the pre-app process with VDOT to figure out what the entire scope would be, and then get an estimate and kind of move forward from that perspective. But this is another way to try to get a project that we had already applied for that was not selected, to try to get funding for it, to get it done.
It would be productive in my own mind if we could see in this work scale project 1, 2, 3, 4, and then look at the whole picture and then decide which horse to run, so to speak.
Well, that was already decided. So we did get 2 projects awarded. So from SmartScape, we got the turn lanes in Lake Caroline, and we got the project at Maryville.
Right, that's great. But is there? This is the only one that's left.
What about the
No, we have the other
sidewalk on Route 1 pipeline up at Ladysmith? Yeah, that, yeah. And that was one of your smart scale applications, too, right?
Oh, that was a turn lane project up at.
But it included sidewalk.
It did include sidewalk.
Yeah, sidewalks.
Yeah, and that's a lot of pedestrian traffic. Our attendee that comes, I think her daughter gets struck by anyway.
Somebody gets struck.
Yeah, the tractors that by there in the library and Ladysmith Village. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic there. Now what you're going to do is kind of parse off and come back and let us know how much the TAP eligible items on this one cost. Can you look, or can you ask VDOT to look at that Ladysmith Village stretch of Route 1 to see what, because the last time she was here, she said there was a child that walked out into US 1, and somebody coming out of the Tractor Supply had to come and get the kid. There's with that library and rest, Sam's and coffee shop there. That would be a really good. You'd have a lot of public support for that. I know these, we have this here. That, in other words, we can throw our bike counter, our bike and pedestrian counter out there. And that would be good to see what the TAP eligible elements of that.
Yeah, that was predominantly 3 turn lane project, and we added the pedestrian accommodations kind of along with those turn lanes.
Yeah.
And I will say, we went out and did a field survey of that stretch from 639 kind of up to Tractor Supply, and also at the other side over on 639 at where the school is. The name of that street escapes me right now. But no, up where Lewis and Clark is.
Oh yeah.
And so that was kind of a combination to kind of look at the impacts of the traffic during school, letting out. And I can tell you, I came back and I called Kyle and said, we got to figure out something for this stretch of Route 1 between Route 1 and Tractor Supply. Because it was scary standing there and watching what was going on with traffic coming out of Durrett, going into the Tractor Supply, going down Route 1, going up Route 1. I mean, I think I saw at least 2 near misses. At one point I was videoing, I stopped videoing because I said I don't want to get subpoenaed to court for my video because I had an accident on on camera, but
Yeah, I drive that way
Yeah.
to work up Route 1, and I think there's a nice trailer park there on the east side, and there's always someone walking
Yep.
to work,
There's a lot of pedestrian
walking from Food Line or places. And now we have the Wawa and Sheets. They're now using the nice new sidewalk at Ladysmith Road.
Mhm.
We have a lot of pedestrian
Mhm.
activity.
it makes a lot of sense. And as a matter of fact, the planning commission last Thursday, I guess it was, actually recommend the adoption of the bike pay plan for Ladysmith.
Great.
So that is moving forward and going to the board. So, if it's the committee's consensus or thought that we look at those two projects, then, I'm happy to do that and put both of them in and see, if we can potentially have viable projects.
My thought is, we got two major quarters, 639 and 207. They're major quarters in the county. And if nothing else, it's for the safety as well as the beautification of those areas. So, it really needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scared driving a vehicle to Ladysmith, so much less walking to Ladysmith. We lived out in the Lake Landor for about 2 years. My house was being built.
Mm-hmm.
I was scared every day coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it needs, people are on the road. It really needs adjustment. And I see the same thing in Common, because I live there. I go there all the time. I think it's needed. Where the funds come from, how the funds get there, don't know. But TAP is an opportunity. I think that's a way we should, consider. Because, Smart Scale is going to be another 6 years.
Yeah, the money we got, if we get awarded in June, then it'll be 6 years before it ends it.
Right. But being somewhat acutely aware how near and dear money is to Caroline County Board of Supervisors, especially with several schools that are going to have to be built soon, and they're going to be jacking the tax rate. They say it's 20% match, local match. It might be better to scale this thing down a little bit and get something done instead of going through the whole hog. And because the pigs get fat and the hog gets slaughtered. And scale it back, because you still got a 20% match. And I don't know where the board has budgeted for money to cover that 20%.
It's an ask, though, right? That's an ask to the board.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Pardon me?
That's the ask for the board. And they figure out funds are somewhere. They'll figure out how to get it as opposed to, everybody didn't like the tax increase that we just had. And I don't think we had to have that tax increase, but that's my personal opinion. I still think that a lot of that should be coming from commercial.
Well, irrespective, that's not our position.
Yeah, no,
here
it's
tonight.
right.
I'm just, our position here tonight is to recognize that the needs are unlimited and the resources are few.
True.
And that means that we need to be a little bit more judicious in trying to maybe scale some things down so they actually get done. My personal opinion, I think that intersection area is greatly needed and would really be a plus. And maybe scale it back some. We might be able to get something that's more doable, maybe.
But what I was saying, I guess you missed it. I was saying that's the ask. We're asking them and let them tell us yes, no, or they don't have the funds, or come back with a plan B, or something like that.
You might ask them a question that's easier to answer.
So Alex, you mentioned the bigger picture.
Yep.
So the bigger picture is, these pedestrian accommodations need to stretch all the way out to Enterprise Drive. These pedestrian accommodations need to extend, I guess, north all the way to Enterprise Drive, across 95, past the commercial development on 207, past the visitor center, up to Belmont to Enterprise Drive. So when you say this is a very small portion of a much larger project, and so, your comments are well taken, but I just want you to understand that, this is a very small portion of a much larger project. And so, from my perspective, you start somewhere and you put it out there that this is what the county's goals are. And when those developers come along and start to infill, they will pay their fair share. And then there's certainly justification, if there's not ordinance requirements, then there's justification for those developers doing those accommodations as part of their.
Again, I totally agree, put it in the CIP, that way you can get it built, hopefully, in the site plan approval process. And, but in terms of getting money from Caroline County Board, it's difficult now, and I think it's going to become more difficult. Because it's not just the cost of building schools, but now you have to pay the teachers, buy the computers, and everything else that goes with it. Just an observation.
A good observation. So is there a consensus that you want to see what both of these projects would look like in their application form and a cost?
Yes.
Okay. And
So I will say that this application period for this cycle ends the end of this month. So I don't know how long this is, our L&D and project management group that works on these estimates. So I don't know if they can come up with that quickly. I don't know if it's just, you say, hey, I want to do this without the roadway improvements, just the sidewalk, how easy that is to pull out of that application. So that's probably where we need to start. I think this process, if we were going to apply for a TAP project, I think this should have been started way earlier. That way, when the application period opened on May 1st, you would be ready to start that process now. It's difficult to say the least. I mean, I could ask to see how long it would take them to come up with an estimate. So they would need to know where you're talking about. To your point, you don't have to do all the sidewalks and everything you saw just because it's smart scale application. You can pull portions of that out and do like the sidewalk on the north side down to where that went. There you go. Could be smaller projects as you go. So the application cycles.
But it's an annual process, right?
Yes.
So we can,
but you don't think they can do it based on this timeline? Because the pre-application just started.
Yeah.
Pre-app.
So
So the application is it's pushed out.
Full application.
Yeah,
pull that in this month, or this is the
the
pre-application.
pre-application started May 30th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
do you have to get the estimate?
I would say at this point, if you all kind of give us what you're looking for, the projects you're thinking about, take that back to our group that runs the TAP program for the district, see what we can figure out. A couple items with TAP just to keep in mind is some of the eligibility requirements. One of the big things is you have to have logical term time. So you can't have a sidewalk that just ends somewhere, even if it's part of a larger plan. The sidewalk in and of itself has to connect two different things that have pedestrian generators. We run into some proposed projects in other localities that run into issues because of that. The other thing I would also keep in mind, and I was trying to look here while we were sitting there, I can't find it offhand. Usually TAP funding is somewhat limited in how much is available in any given application period. So if you're talking a project that's $8-10 million, you're probably not going to be able to get that much funding in one application cycle. So just a couple things to keep in mind as you're talking about those projects. But Leon, to your point, if you all have a couple ones you all would like us to take a look at, we could do that and see, like Rick said, see what we can pull together before the deadline.
well, I would say the two projects that we didn't get funded through SmartScape that have pedestrian components. That would be this one and the one up at Lazy.
Right.
Great. And then finish it.
Like I said, there might have to be a conversation of, all right, if what's proposed in those projects is way above what's going to be available in this application cycle, then we might have a follow-up conversation to say, all right, where does it make sense to pare this back, and what are the priorities to move focus on?
Right. And the one thing to keep in mind is we would take out, the roadway sections, yeah, it would just be the pedestrians. So the cost should drop considerably.
Let's see how much.
Yeah.
The roadway portion is the bigger cost.
Should be, and I
And
don't.
I'm get right of way.
Yeah, I would say that on the Latham project, that might be a bigger cost.
Excuse me, would the owners of these properties donate the rights of way, or would we have to buy?
They certainly could. Typically, as we go through these processes, we don't assume that, just because, we're required by law when we go to them to say, all right, you can be compensated for this land. Typically, when we have that conversation, people become sometimes less willing to work through donation. So that's obviously something, if that's something the county can work through, or anybody can work through making that happen, that'll reduce the project
Okay.
cost.
And if we get, I guess you know something about valuation, don't you? And we get the valuation of, say, maybe $500,000 of donations, could that be added towards the 20% of our share?
I don't believe so.
That's great.
That's creative for sure.
No, it's not creative.
At one point it could,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But that would help. That would help.
Yeah, it did.
And if they don't want to donate it, then maybe that's not a pedestrian generator type of project. And they build their own cells. Eventually they will. Eventually.
I think the challenge at this point would be, for this application process, we probably have to assume that would be the case. We're not going to have any firm commitments on that.
It's the worst case.
6 months, exactly.
But in the process, we could probably squeeze it.
Yeah, see, that's an option.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the prospect that something will develop in either one of these corridors that might contribute that right away. So that segment of the project cost goes down.
Or having a sidewalk in front of a vacant piece of ground helps it. And they should give it. You need somebody that can explain it to them.
Well, it certainly reduces their development costs.
Yeah.
So what do you want from us?
Just consensus that we will explore those pedestrian components of the 2 smart scale applications that were not funded in this round of smart scale for
Well, I
potential
think
TAP applications.
Get your Explorer hat on and go out and explore.
And,
Most,
Word it that way.
That should move forward and gather as much information and explore the process to its fullest. How's that for doing something but being evasive?
I'll second that motion.
it's been moved properly second that we will explore those opportunities. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Anything else on your list, Mr. Sears? Okay. Couple things. Pete, I want to give y'all thank y'all for looking at Old Don Boulevard. I was with Mr. Madison, Calvin Madison, did a fantastic job out there. One of the things that came back was road pipes. Are the residents responsible for road pipes?
Under the driveway, yes.
Yes.
Roadway, no.
No, not on the roadway, but the driveway.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't realize this until I got there. That's one of the major problems there because there are no road pipes. And they were complaining about the water backing up and running across the road. So how do we fix that? I asked them to get the pipes. They got them 2 weeks after y'all left. Okay. So how do we fix that? Is that something, if y'all were to come back and do the ditches and put the road pipes in, or that a cost to the resident? How does it look?
Typically speaking, that does completely fall on the property owner. However, if the water is affecting the roadway, there might be a conversation.
It's definitely, okay.
Let me get back with Calvin and talk to him and see kind of what they're seeing out there. And if the water is affecting the roadway negatively, that's something like we'll just
Okay. All right, thank you for that. Also on Zion Road, I did send them a picture right in front of Oxford Mount Zion Church, Oxford Mount Zion Baptist Church, out Deer Farm. I love farmers, but my dear, this one particular farmer is just not being cooperative with us. Ran the disc across the road. Yeah, the disc did not pick the disc up, just ran it. And grooves all through the road. So I did send a picture over to Brandon, so I would like to all kind of follow that picture.
Believe it or not, that happened a year or two ago on Mount Vernon Church. 3 days after we
Interesting, took the sign.
so that's unfortunate. And I will tell you, in some cases, if we have some decent evidence, say we got involved in that one in Mount Vernon Church. So certainly, if there's damage to public property, then decent things come along.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll check in with them and see what we have.
Might be from here to Leon. Probably just ran
Well,
down.
that's not nearly as bad as Mount Vernon Church.
Enough to where he,
Yeah, I mean, you would think you know it from here to there, but okay. One last point. I can get you all with this, but Brandon has. How are we moving forward with board? What are we? I know we've discussed it. We have put in the teeth in this. What are we doing? Did you send that?
Page that
Is- Beat out of budget?
Well,
when
you
you
said
say-
the board's open, so
Let me, Mr. Chair, let me clarify. When you say board members, you mean committee members?
Committee members, yes, committee members, yes.
I want to clarify that because we have board members who are on this committee.
Yes,
So I want to be sure that you're speaking of the entire body and not just those individuals.
that is correct.
Yeah, we can, we send the agendas out. I suspect this meeting during spring break week would have a light attendance because it is spring break week, and so there are a lot of people traveling and doing, other things. But it's been an issue, and we can ask people if they still have an interest in participating, and see if not, then maybe give their seat and try to find someone else to participate.
I know we kind of talked about that before, so is that something that I should send out, or at least Lisa would probably be better with the word, or at least give me the wording, I'll send it out.
Everyone is up for reappointment. Actually, everyone is up for reappointment. I mean,
This
it's
year.
been a year
Yeah.
or over a year since I think everyone was appointed. So
that's a good point. Why don't you poll each of your committee members to find out who wants to be reappointed and who wants to escape.
And I don't have their contact information other than email, so we have it.
Yeah. Or Leon, or Lisa.
Thank you. I know you got a lot of people. No, I'll sincerely help you with that. I promise you I'll be very tactful when I talk to you. So, yeah, if you can get that to me, I'll make those calls. And, come back and let everybody know who wants to continue or be replaced. And that way, my suggestion would be like similar to my suggestion last year. Each person in each district would make a recommendation of who they would like to bring in.
Well, it's a board member who appoints us.
Well, the board members appoints us, right? But does the board member have to appoint committee member?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are all appointed by the group.
Okay, all right.
Up to the board members. But the committee can give a report to the board as a whole. And it's not just each board member acting independently, I believe it's done in open session as an agenda item, appointment to this committee.
Okay. At least we'll have that information in advance. To know what seats are being.
I know too that Spotsylvania County and Stafford always ask us for the attendance record of our technical advisory committee and our citizen transportation advisory committee. And so, letting the board know of the attendance record of the current appointees is an important element, I think, for them to make a decision on whether or not to reappoint. And if the person says, yeah, I want to be reappointed, but they have not shown up, then first to hold their willingness and then maybe put at least some kind of report to the individual board members. I don't think it's good to kind of be a tattletale publicly on that. Maybe just see if they're willing and then just let the board member know the attendance, because we didn't really let people know, and I don't think the bylaws say, in the case of Spotsylvania, they actually have a policy that says if the person missed more than a certain percentage, and we would normally have to say, well, this person did miss more than the percentage, but he was an alternate and the wasn't needed to be that voting seat, so we always look at the, it takes us a lot of time because we go back and look at who did come, and if the person didn't come, were they an alternate, but they didn't have to come because they, so I think a quiet report of attendance to the individual board member who appointed them. And we did adopt the bylaws, correct?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we did.
And the bylaws are silent. It says a year term, but it's silent as far as any percent of time you have to show up. So that's kind of a subjective thing. In other words, if I'm a board member and I appointed somebody and they said, well, they only showed up or attended one meeting, well, that's okay. It's still my guy, so it should just not, be their personal prerogative on how to take that attendance. Good. Yeah, that's the way it should be.
That wrap it up, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion been properly second to adjourn, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.